think we can make a start. So welcome everyone to our Pro.NET community session. So we have some interesting topics today for you. First of all, Sasha Lihavets will share some interesting insights, updates about .NET tools, .NET World. We're not going to cover today the upcoming release of .NET 7, as this is a very large topic, and we are going to have a dedicated session around that in November once it is released. But there will be still some interesting things. And then we'll move on to Denise, who will share a very interesting topic about puzzle-driven development. That was something new for me because I previously just worked mostly with different flavors of Scrum, Agile, Safe, and this is a really fun stuff that Denise will share. So we are right now in Zoom, and you can put your questions, answers in Q&A tab. So we will try to answer by voice or by typing. In some cases, somewhere at the end, probably once we have like more open discussion, we probably will be able to unmute some of you and just to have discussion by voice. All right, good. So, Sasha, why don't you share your screen and move on?
Yeah, wait a second. All right, boom, share screen, and yeah, this one. Yeah, this one. Sure. Sorry, I don't use this Zoom very often. Did you see my screen, guys?
We do.
Cool, all right. So what I want to show you today, and I want to show you some new things and tools that have released over the summer and the beginning of the autumn. Actually, it is not too much because summer it is time for vacation and for rest, and I hope that it will be more during this autumn. And
yeah, because I think Microsoft is concentrated nowadays to release .NET 7.
Yeah, it is more important. Agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, but start from Visual Studio 17. Visual Studio is our main tool, and this summer, regardless vacations, version 17.3 was released, and the version 17.4 was released in preview. And what's new in it? 17.4 will have a native ARM64 support. It means that we'll be able to run Visual Studio on ARM64 platforms. I did watch some video on YouTube related to it, and for me, it is absolutely the same Visual Studio. And based on description of guys from this video, it works absolutely fine. Next thing that will be improved, it is Visual Studio Installer. And it will be able to remove some outdated components from your Visual Studio. It means that now Visual Studio will be more lightweight. I also suppose that it is good news. Git tooling also will be updated. It is minor change, but I suppose it will be useful for people who is using Git inside Visual Studio. Now you can untrack files directly from Solution Explorer and directly from Git change tool window. Just right click where your file, you can see the demonstration in the slide. Just right click and select Git and ignore. Yep, pretty simple and pretty useful.
Yeah, regarding Visual Studio on ARM, it would be really interesting to see and track the performance, just to taste the performance of Visual Studio on ARM.
But I don't know when we'll have a possibility to test it actually in the real life, because
first we need some machine. Yeah.
Maybe somewhere in the in the remote.
Well,
in the cloud.
I know that Microsoft a few days ago announced the update to their Surface products, and they have this Surface tablet, Surface Pro, what they call. So previously they had like a dedicated version of Surface based on ARM. So now they just offer Surface 9, and you can choose whether you want it to be Intel or ARM64 processor, like Microsoft designed ARM64 processor.
And it has Windows ARM64 installed with the support rest of the software, which is shipped with Windows, also support with the ARM64. That's interesting. Right. Continue with Visual Studio improvements, code search. Unfortunately, this functionality will not be was not released in 70.3 and is still in development. But I suppose it will be released in the next version, 17.4. We'll see. So, what is code search? In the previous meetup, I showed this functionality. But actually, if you are familiar with if you worked with ReSharper or Rider, it is almost the same functionality as a go to all. It is a nice search window which allows you to search across your projects, across your IDE setups, across everything that you have in your IDE and a project and so on. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll have it in the next version, but currently they're working on performance improvement, UI improvement, and so on. Next feature, which will be available to document, it is a document outline. It is a small window, small tool window, which will store and then contains just representation of your document structure. Maybe for some people it will be useful. At least I had the same functionality in another IDE, like C++ IDE or and the last thing that will be available on the 70.4 is selection match highlighting. We have the same functionality in Visual Studio Code. It is almost the same. Now it is present in the big Visual Studio. You can just start code selection, text selection on your editor, and the matching will be immediately highlighted. Of course, it works in the scope of the file. And yeah, unfortunately, there is it about Visual Studio. Moving next, Rider and ReSharper. So look, JetBrains has given us more update than Visual Studio. And this year, Rider celebrates 5th birthday and ReSharper 18th birthday. And really, it is an impressive number, isn't it? I think that 18th birthday for any software is very, very impressive. I even can't imagine that ReSharper almost 18 years with us. I don't know, Alexei, what do you think about it?
Yeah, so I never tried ReSharper. Some of my folks from my team actually switched from Visual Studio to Rider to ReSharper. Well, Rider has built-in ReSharper, right? Mm-hmm. So my own preference. That's why I'm not so excited, because I stopped using ReSharper maybe 5 years ago. I just at some point I realized it does too much for me. So I wanted less ReSharper in my life at some point. Yeah, and I just started using plain Visual Studio, and the way how they started improving Visual Studio, I really like it. So I think right now Visual Studio perfectly fits my needs. I really like it.
Yeah.
While ReSharper is like too verbose,
too smart,
too much. It does too much. Yeah, but yes, sometime in the past, Visual Studio capabilities were like not as good as ReSharper's capabilities.
Mm-hmm, I agree. Yeah, and so let's look at the functionality which will be available in the next release of Rider. It will have a WSL support. It means that you will be able to open, run your solutions directly and debug your solutions directly on WSL2, which is also interesting. It will have ARM64 support. It means that you'll be able to run Rider directly in ARM64 architecture of Linux. It will have MAUI support, initial MAUI support. Initial, it means that it will be able to open, run, modify, and debug WinUI3 project, which is the same that MAUI, but it will not have some extra functionality like some special refactorings, analyzers, and so on. It will be available in the future. Now Rider will support SQL Server project. I know that is highly requested feature last 5 years, and now it will be available in the next release. That's cool.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I thought nowadays everyone just uses NoSQL databases.
Yeah, everyone switched to NoSQL, but Rider announced this feature. Cool.
Yeah, it's
And
interesting that Rider users prefer to use SQL Server instead of NoSQL databases.
yeah, maybe user base is so wide, and some of them prefer to use this, SQL.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
agree.
Blazor and the Razor, and the next release, Rider will have a almost completely rewritten Razor formatted. It will have a much more faster than before, and also .NEXT 6 hot roller functionality also will be updated in the Rider. It works now in the current version, but it just works without wow. But we'll see how it will work in the next version. They promise that it will be much more faster than before. And last thing that will be available on the next Rider release, it is a new UI. You can check it out in the current eApp, and you can see it in the picture.
Alexander, is
JetBrains,
it really new? It looks like
no, it
it
is not
looked like
Visual
it.
Studio Code.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, agree. For me, it looks like, I don't know, just another Visual Studio Code competitor. I mean, from UI perspective. Maybe for some people it will be fine. At least it is not a final version. It's just up, and both old school and the new modern UI is available. You can switch between them and check it out, which is good for you, and use it. We'll see. I don't know. And next, and the last thing from JetBrains, it is a Fleet. It was released a few days ago in the public preview. What is the Fleet? Fleet, they call it a next generation ID. And initially, it's just code editor with syntax highlight support, but it has a kind of magic button with lighting. It is kind of a smart mode. You can press the button and power up this editor. It will power enough like IntelliJ IDEA, Rider, how it's called, PyCharm for Python. Depends from your needs. And some collaboration tools and so on, much more. But why they call it the next generation ID? Because this smart functionality can be run somewhere outside this ID, this editor. And outside, it means not only your local ops, not only your machine. It can be run somewhere in the server. It means that you can use this lightweight, but actually not lightweight editor, and all heavy functionality or heavy calculation will happen somewhere in the server. I don't know, is it good or not? We'll see. Maybe it is our real future, maybe the real next generation. At least I heard about it before the Fleet release, even before Fleet was not mentioned anywhere, that potentially we would need to have some editors with some heavy calculations somewhere on the outside of your machine. But I don't know. They
And
call it like a
it is not Electron based, right?
no, it is not Electron based. It is
Strange.
right by Kotlin, as I know, Java Kotlin, and Skia. They call it like a lightweight ID, but I don't know, maybe it will be fixed in the future. I tried it, I installed it, and just open it, Hello World application, C# Hello World application, and it consumes about 200 gigabytes without smart mode. With smart mode, I even can imagine how much it is. I don't know, we'll see. Just it is just public preview and even not released version, we'll see. Moving next, dnSpy. What is dnSpy? I just wanted to mention this utility, no, better said, tools, because I did use it in the past. It is very, very cool disassembler and debugger and assembly editor for .NET. Unfortunately, an official version is Packet, or how to call it, zipped, I don't know how to call it, but not supported.
Archived, right?
Yeah, archived, correct. Yeah. The guys just created a fork from it, and the forks appear very, very, very popular. So developers are, and community continue to develop the project. Here I put just a few examples of new latest improvements on it. Now DNSPy support .NET 6, support ARM64 targets, support Visual Studio 2022 solution files. And actually this list is much more bigger. You can go to the DNSPy site, DNSPyX site, and check it out, full list of functionality. Very cool tool, advise you. Next thing, systemd and VSL. So what is systemd? It is a basic building block of Linux. It is a process with identifier number 1. It starts first and then start the rest of the system. And why do we need it? Because a lot of application depends from it. For example, Docker, right? Now we have it in the WSL. Actually, it is still in preview. You have to install it from Microsoft Store, directly from Microsoft Store. Enable it somewhere, the configuration, but it works, and you can run this application with the patch from systemd without any magic. I can say that it was not possible at all previously, but for
it
this
was
it was
like
necessary.
As Linux-y.
Yeah,
as it is with systemd, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, I really like WSL feature of Windows, and sometimes I'm asked, why don't I get a MacBook? And the reason is because macOS just doesn't have this nice WSL feature. I really like it. It's
but
my
maybe
favorite.
Mac doesn't need it at all. Mac, it is almost Linux. It has a BSD core. Maybe, I don't know, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little bit different.
So here in the slide, in the bottom of the slide, I put a link to a video in the Microsoft portal with explanation how to use it, how to enable it, and why do we need it. Moving next, .NET Community Toolkit. It is more related to MVVM, and he deserves attention in connection with the release of MAUI. Microsoft doesn't have its own MVVM toolkit, and this one, I suppose, will be a good start to use in new projects, for example, with MAUI project. This library was inspired by MVVM Lite. Actually, it is almost the same. It is rewritten in the .NET standard, and the semantic is almost the same. Relay command, notify property change implementation. In advance, it has some code generators for notify property change implementation and for relay command implementation to avoid you to write some boilerplate code. Suppose, yeah, it will be a good start to use it. Pretty easy, no overhead like reactive UI and so on. Yep, good choice, I suppose. Moving next, .NET Nano framework. So I haven't heard about it for a long time, but it is constantly developing and gaining popularity, actually. So
yeah, really surprised that it's still alive.
Yeah, for me too. And yeah, what is it? It is framework to write C# code for embedded system for microcontrollers. Under the hood, it uses ChibOS. What is ChibOS? ChibOS, it is a real-time operating system designed by professor of mathematics Giovanni Di Sirio from Italy. And actually, I did use ChibOS before. It is very cool. And I know that NASA use also in their some apparatus, their tools also use ChibOS. It is fully static, and why it is popular? Because it has its own hardware abstraction layer. So it means that you don't need to write its own drivers for it. Here in the bottom of the slide, I just put a mess of device names, which is supported by Nano framework, and actually it is full list of, not full, but almost full list, which is supported by ChibOS. It is so easy to check it out, this utility. Of course, you need some debugger utility, debugger hardware tools to develop something with Nano framework. But it is not so expensive now, and if you're interested, you can check it out and use existing knowledges in the .NET and C#.
And as you said, it is used in the platform GBOS is used in NASA. Then that means you can use .NET to build your own rockets, right?
Uh-oh. Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Maybe rockets also. Go next. And last slide, I just want to mention a few things in a nutshell. NuGet 6.3 was released without any additional information, just we have new version 6.3. Yep, use it. Linkupad 7.4, well, doesn't matter. New version of Linkupad was released, some bug fixing and so on. But what's interesting here, in the article related to this new version, I read that they promise to include Microsoft IntelliCode at a new version of Linkupad. I suppose it will be kind of Linkupad 8 or 9, I don't know. We'll see how it works. I know that IntelliCode is not fully free or not free at all. I don't know. We'll see. What else? Microsoft provided new way to write Visual Studio extensions. I'm not fully familiar with it, and I have nothing to say about it because I didn't write any extension for Visual Studio because I have no any experience with it. But they announced it, and they say that it will be much more easy for extensions developers who to write them and support. And the last thing that I want to mention here, it is nice and interesting article that projects are leaving .NET Foundation.
That's really interesting topic. Well, what's going on there?
So the question here, why do we need this .NET Foundation? What's the benefit I have that my project, for example, is a part of .NET Foundation? A lot of questions here, and no one knows why do we need it? Why do we need to do some special stuff to be part of .NET Foundation? And also, there is some internal problems related to utility and tooling inside this .NET Foundation cooperation, and much more interesting question. And few people, which is really important in our community, I mean, the community of .NET developers also mentioned it, that we don't want to be the part of .NET Foundation, how to leave it. And for example, it is a creator of Akka framework. Sorry, I forgot his name again.
Aaron something.
Yeah.
Aaron.
I try to remember it, but sorry about it. But you know who is it. Also, yeah, I suppose his opinion is very important in this area. It means something.
Yeah, right. I mean, the intent of this .NET Foundation organization was like pretty bright to support the most critical projects in .NET world, to make sure that people responsible for them have enough money to support, or put some development efforts there. But in reality, I don't think it worked anytime.
Yeah, I know that everything, the trigger point for this question was a bot or a job or a GitHub, which just occasionally move it, or specially, I don't know, I suppose no one know, moved all projects from special organization, changed some, not contracts, change, how to call it, special rules for this project, and so on. Yeah, better if you check it out itself. It's so hard to explain this story.
Really interesting and important topic. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, there is it for me. Thank you for your attention, and if we have some question, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Always nice to hear some updates about .NET.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Denis. Yeah, right. It's your turn. PDD. We've already got some questions regarding whether it is PDD session or what, because people, some folks came here to listen your speech about PDD. Or maybe they wanted to adopt it on their own projects. Who knows? Right.
Guys, let you know when you see my screen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you see
we can hear and see.
Yeah, let's start discussing, and maybe I'm going to share a couple of interesting insights that I got once I started applying this development methodology. And of course, I think the most famous question: why should we use puzzle-driven development methodology? Why just a regular Scrum is not enough, and blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. Of course, we try to prepare some interesting materials, guys, for you that's not obvious to share, and maybe to give you some extra extra ideas to think about, and maybe to extend your vision on software development. And what is puzzle-driven development? It is software development methodology that delegates the responsibility of task decomposition to its performers. And this methodology was created by Yegor Bugayenko. Maybe you heard about this guy. He's just really extraordinary.
Heard many times from you, Denis.
Okay, of course, because I just try to keep an eye on what he's doing and his ideas, because I liked a couple of them. I find them really interesting, at least, and worth to try. Yeah, this guy, he's a professional software developer, architect with a lot of years of experience behind his back. And he started thinking about some methodology which can be created by the technical guy, not by the managers, but someone who just writes the code, who knows how the whole processes work, and maybe to come up with some interesting ideas to solve the challenges that software development lifecycle still has. And let me introduce the agenda for the day. We're going to discuss software development lifecycle challenges we have. Then I'm going to tell you about key principles of puzzle-driven development I was able to get familiar with. And also after that, I'm going to talk about pros and cons, what it is good for, with just negative points and drawbacks we found once we started using this methodology on our R&D project. And then I'm going to show you our R&D project. It's a real experience project. I'm going to share the code, how it works, and the main ideas behind this. And in that, we will have some Q&A session, if you have one. Let's get started then. What software development lifecycle challenges still exist? The first one maybe is ineffective estimation process. It's because it's done manually, and usually it's not updated regularly. We have to do the grooming sessions once again, maybe to re-estimate the things. We do it over and over again. And what is just a bad thing about this, that sometimes it's almost impossible to decompose most of the tasks up front. We still have a lot of uncertain things in front of us when we're doing the estimations. And the third one is human factor. Once we do the estimations, usually people do these estimations and they make mistakes. And if you want to estimate your project upfront, it is a high chance that you will end up having really huge mistake factor. In the end, your estimations will have nothing to the real world. It will be something on the paper, but in the reality, the real time will be tremendously different. Also, I can say that modern software development methodologies and frameworks still have the problem of scalability of your resources. Once you involve some people in the project, you still have to go through the onboarding process. It will take, you cannot extend the team tremendously if you need it. Let's say you just realize that your project will not be done on time and you need to extend the resources, you need to involve new people, and modern software development methodologies just almost can do nothing with this. Anyway, you have to go through the onboarding process and you have to spend a lot of time from your current resources, to share the knowledge and all of this stuff. I'm pretty sure that you're aware about this. This is the fifth point here is long iteration life cycle. If most of you follow Scrum methodology, you know that regular Scrum life cycle is about 2 or 3 weeks. The team is not capable to deliver something faster than in 2 weeks. I mean, something robust, something that can be used. The feedback, of course, 2 weeks, sometimes 2 weeks, it's also pretty good time frame, because some weak teams need 3 weeks to deliver something or even more, but 2 weeks, and we cannot reduce this time. Once we try to reduce this, we got a lot of troubles when we just try to reduce the life cycle of iteration. And also unmanageable environment. And just now, if you ask who manages whose, our managers do not control the development process, because developers tell them how much time it will take to complete this task or that task, and they have to agree. They have nothing to say. If I tell you that it will take months, maybe if the team says that it will take 1 month for you to develop this feature, you have to accept. You can't do nothing. You can just, and even if you assign some task to the guy, he start working on this, maybe spending days and weeks implementing the feature. You ask what the status, and he or she start complaining about some problems that he or she faced, and she needs more time to complete, blah, blah, blah. You have to listen to these excuses all the time on daily basis. It's not done. It will be done soon, maybe in 1 day, in 3 days, and you find yourself having no results in 1 week. Yeah. And
it all sounded like exactly what is going on in my project.
Yeah, it's not something special, it's just regular thing that happens. To be honest, managers like teachers in kindergarten, they just are running around asking developers to work a little bit and just to deliver something, please, please, and you have to beg for some results. It's really annoying sometimes, especially when you're already behind the budget, behind the time frame, the milestone, and other stuff. Okay, what is the key principles here for puzzle-driven development? What it is about? The first and most important key principle is strict budget for any task. This is really a revolutionary idea. Let's say business introduce some tasks for you, and say, hey, we want to develop something like Google search engine. We also want to have something like Google does. And the idea here is to give you, as a developer, only 1 hour to solve the issue. And once you get this task, you should understand that it's not possible to develop the Google platform in 1 hour. Then if you understand that you cannot close the task in 1 hour, your goal is to decompose. This is the second principle, close or decompose. If you understand that it is not enough time to complete the task, you see you have the strict budget for any task in the system. Even if it is too big, your goal for this 1 hour is to decompose, to introduce new puzzles. You do it just directly in the code. You write to-do comment, and puzzle-driven collector is capable to recognize your comments as a puzzles. And if you understand that, hey, okay, we cannot develop Google search platform in 1 hour, what we have to do? Okay, let's say we have to develop front end, we have to develop database, to design database. Let's say we have to develop backend to be able to produce the results based on the search information user provided. And also maybe we need to develop some web pages, bot indexers that will be scanning the web for us, just doing some extra stuff, indexing the pages, all of this. And you just create the points. Point number 1, do this. Point number 2, point number 3, number 5. You just introduce your points, your vision, how this task has to be done. And you commit your code. You just introduce the puzzles. It's called puzzles. And you commit your code, and the system is capable to recognize, to parse the piece of comments you commented and create new puzzles for you, new tasks, which will be assigned maybe to you, maybe to someone else. And it just repeats again. Once you get the task, you just read the summary, you just read the acceptance criteria, and you understand, can I complete this task in 1 hour or not? If I cannot complete, I decompose and commit some changes with the points which has to be complete to complete the whole task. This is how it works. And the third principle is cut the corners. You as a developer don't have to dig a lot to understand the scope, the feature which has to be done. If you read the scope and you do not understand something, it's not your pain anymore. You just create some new puzzle with the question. Point number 1 is not clear enough. Maybe your code, you don't have documentation, you don't have the clear code. This God class has to be eradicated first. I do not understand how to complete the task because of these issues that I've been able to find. You have to cut the corners. You have to move directly to the end and try to close the task. If you see that you cannot close it for some reason, you just don't have to do this. You just have to create new puzzles, asking the project to fix the issues first you found. This is just called cut the corners principle. The fourth one is no school principle. I contacted Yegor Bugayenko directly, we discussed the principle a little bit. I provided my K principles and he added this point. He says, actually, the real project, it's not a school. If you going to study something, if you don't know something and you want to waste our project money to learn something, it's not a good idea. We're not going to pay for this. It's not school, go and study somewhere else. If you come to the project, you have to deliver something in 1 hour. And it's really appreciated if you just do not raise some silly questions about what is SQL database, what is NoSQL database, blah, blah, blah. Such questions should be eradicated. Project should just ignore them and do not answer. If you do not understand the main area, maybe if you don't know .NET platform or C# language, do not ask these questions from the project. Just go and teach yourself first and go back and make some money here. It's just, he said that it's really important to add here. And the fifth principle, which is also really important, is developer roles. It's just really important because you want your project to be scalable. And you see, it definitely has to be 3 roles, at least 3 roles in the project. We just decided to use these 3 roles. The first one is architect. It is someone who has the full context about the project. You, as a developer, you read all the documentation, you just discussed the problems with the business, you see where the business goes, and you have the full context. And once the feature comes from the business, it definitely should be assigned to architect role first. And someone who has an architect role on the project should get this task and create new puzzles. He has whole vision about the system, and then he creates the puzzles for the next role, which is lead. And lead role just it's more about technical vision, and also you still need to have some partial context about the system you develop. And then once you have the context, once you got some puzzles from the architect, you can create the new sub puzzles for the developer's role. And as a developer, it should be absolutely technical task, which is clear from the scope, what has to be done and how it has to be done. As a developer, you don't need to have the context. If you just read the task and you do not understand something, it's not your problem. You just write some question, commit it back, and this is it. You've done. You can do something else. You don't care. This is good. Really, these developer roles really allows you to involve more people. Let's say you just start doing the decomposition of your project, creating new puzzles, and in the end, maybe in a couple of hours, you understand, hey, we have 200 puzzles for developer roles, and we can onboard some guys who has no context. It's pretty technical. It's pretty clear what has to be done. If you know, let's say SQLIDB, or if you know some tools that we use to collaborate with the server side, it should be absolutely clear what has to be done. This for JSON format should be sent. We expect this response. You should be parsed like that. Or maybe let's say you just need to throw an exception when a total amount of something was exceeded. It should be really concrete about the things. And how it's usually worked. Let me just introduce some example. Let's say business introduced feature A. It just says blah, blah, blah. It has to be done, something, you want this thing. And as an architect, you just get this feature, you do some analysis, and you say, hey, to complete this feature, we need to complete A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. You introduce a few new five puzzles, but you still understand that it is really high level for the moment. It's not clear for anybody else, and it definitely needs to be assigned to architect role. And you just say, hey, this task A1 should be picked up by architect and decomposed. This is how you just manage the project. You introduce the puzzle, and you definitely should say about the role which can be assigned for the task. And you see, as an architect, you pick up task number 2, and you just introduce three new puzzles, to 1, to 2, to 3, and you say, hey, it is clear enough for the team lead to pick up this task and continue decomposition. And once you, as a team lead, get the task, you can decompose A1, A2, and other stuff. You just create some tasks for the developers. And let's say you just, as an architect, or maybe tech lead, no matter what, you just got the task A4, and you see that it is still has a lot of unclear moments. And you just create A41, assign it to architect role again, and say, hey, point number A4 is not clear, please clarify, and you introduce your questions. And this is how you just send your request back to the project, and architect, who will be assigned with this task, have to read your questions and do the answers. And once, let's say, he just does the answers, he can close your task. It's clear that it can be done in 1 hour or maybe less. He just prepared the answers and maybe even decomposed the task A4 into 3 subtasks for the lead. This is how it should be working. You just decompose. Once you understand that it is small enough to be completed, you just start completing, closing the puzzles. And the regular project, it just time frame, or life cycle of the project, it goes like this. You see, first week, let's say for the few weeks at the beginning, you just decomposing the tasks, you creating new puzzles, it's starting to grow, and somewhere in the middle, maybe not in the middle, it just not determined. You understand that decomposition is not happening anymore, and now your developers started closing the tasks. And you see, in some after the beginning and maybe in the middle of the project, you just understand that the puzzles started to be closed. And you understand that you start moving to them. This is how usual time frame for any project with puzzle-driven development looks like. Decompose and then close. Once decomposition has been done enough. The other interesting idea and even tool that Yegor introduced, it is Zerocrat artificial intelligence estimation. This is a special project manager that just does the analysis of your project in, let's say, live. It just analyzes the project all the time, every day. It just tracks how many tasks, how many puzzles were created, how many puzzles were closed, how many puzzles we had at the beginning, what is the main area. It's some kind of neural network which has a lot of statistics about the projects that have been done recently, or maybe long time ago. It knows about the whole projects, what was the time frame of the project, how many puzzles were created, the speed of the puzzles that were created or closed, the number of incidents were appearing and closed. He just knows about the time frame of the projects that have been passed recently, and it's some kind of progress indicator. It's like if you remember previously, if you download some big file from the internet, you see the progress of downloading. It just tries to predict the time it will take for you to download the file completely, and it just does the same for you. It just does the analysis. You introduce the domain area, It knows if it was the domain, pretty similar domain areas used before. It just does the analysis of first level features your business created and how fast decomposition and closing happens. It can predict when the project will be ready based on the statistics it's already have. It's really interesting. You do not involve people to estimate the project. You just give them some strict budget, 1 hour, and ask them to work. Hey, this is 1 hour for you. Do your job for 1 hour. We will pay, and then you just get some contribution back. And our zero-crat manager will do the estimation for the project. And it happens all the time. You see some statistics about where project phase, where it just at the moment, and how many weeks already been spent, and how many weeks it will take to complete the project, based on the speed, on the velocity of the team that was just introduced maybe 2 days ago, today, or maybe a week ago. It just does analysis all the time. The next useful tool, it is puzzle-driven development puzzles collector. It is some kind of webhook which is listening for your GitHub repository, and once you commit something into main branch, it scans the code base that was committed and just tries to find these puzzles. This is a format of the puzzle you can see here on the screen, and it's just some kind of the ideal approach. Once you want to introduce the feature, you have to start from writing the unit test first. It's really good thing to have some kind of progress and to store the progress. If you have only 1 hour to complete something, let's say you just got something to implement, you understand pretty well about what has to be done and how it has to be done, and you have to start from the unit tests first. The test can fail, and it is really good if you just introduce the test and say, hey, it should be green, but now it's failing. Could you please just fix the test, fix the issue? And you can commit, it's already enough. If it's already, it's a really good example of some puzzle when you just write something that has to be done, and you even have the acceptance test, the automation test, which has to be green. It's really good. You just start from writing unit tests first, introducing the puzzles. Ideally, you can introduce only the puzzle, but ideally, if you just spend some time, maybe introduce the contract and even prepare some unit tests, which is the ideal case. Okay, what is the pros and cons we were able to find out? The pros, let's start from this. The documentation is always up to date. You see, once you just see the puzzle, you understand that you have to understand the context in maybe 15 minutes or even less. You read the scope, you see the documents, the reference, and you can say, hey, this document is not up to date. This document is absent. I do not understand this. I do not understand that. You just cut the corners and you push it back, and the project has to make the documentation to be up to date first. If your documentation is not up to date, it's not possible for the team to move ahead. The outdated documentation has to be fixed first. Maybe some pages has to be removed or maybe rewritten because it's not clear and other stuff. Also, test-driven development approach is pushed in a natural way. It is a really good approach to pin on some result if you just write some unit test. If you have some failing unit test, it's already enough to commit and to create the puzzle. You already done a good job for the project because you created something that really can be pinned. You can have some valuable result already. If you even didn't write any piece of code, you still have nothing, but you already come up with some interesting unit test to check the feature, to check that this feature is working well. It's already really good point. Code quality is more frequently validated. Yeah, because of the cut of the corners principle, your developers will not be cleaning your code if it's not set in the puzzle itself. Let's say you just was told to do something, you open the file, you read the puzzle, you read the code, it's absolutely unclear. It is God class, or maybe I don't know. It cannot be unit tested or other stuff. Any issue you found in the code, you just cut the corner, create the puzzles, fix this, fix this, fix this. This puzzle cannot be complete without these ones. by the way, you can reference the parent puzzle when you introduce the sub-puzzles. You can reference the parent puzzle in GitHub. Will be storing these things. The next one is effective resource management. Because of this micro-tasking approach allows you to involve new resources into the team without long onboarding process. You just got someone on the project, you give the puzzle and it's asking for 1 hour. Of course, it should be dependent. You should really understand what role for this puzzle should be used. If you have someone, if you have some developer, do not give him or her the role for architect. It will be inefficient. It will be just wasting everybody's time. But if you have, let's say, just have some puzzles for developers, you can assign the puzzle immediately. Once someone joined the project, assign the puzzle. He reads the puzzle, he spent his 1 hour, maybe not doing something in the code, but understanding the project and maybe creating some questions for you because it was not clear enough to complete the puzzle. It's already valuable contribution to the project, making the project to be smart enough. This is the next principle, actually. Smart project without experts. Project should be smart enough to protect itself. You don't need, or it's just really a negative point if you have some experts on the project, if you need to call someone to explain what's going on. It hasn't been done like that. Project should be smart enough, should be documented enough, covered with unit tests enough to protect itself, and the code should be clean enough to understand what's going on here without any reading, I don't know, a lot of files. Maybe the project itself you see really huge and you say it needs to be split into different modules because it's unmaintainable. And fast iterations, you see, you have only a strict budget, let's say 1 hour. In 1 hour, you have some result. Maybe you have nothing, it's also the result. I'm just going to talk about the cons next. But if you have nothing, it's also the result because you understand that your project is not maintainable enough because someone cannot complete the task you gave 1 hour. Maybe it wasn't described really good, or some other problems already exist. Just reveal the problems immediately because you involve someone. You don't have to do some kind of big onboarding process. Of course, you're gonna ask me, oh my God, how are we gonna do this? We have billions lines of code in our project, and it takes maybe months for anybody just to onboard on the project to understand the whole picture. And you see, this is where the roles should be used: architect, lead, and developer. If you assign some task on the guy who has no context, you're gonna fail. Definitely, you should keep it in mind. And that's why you just should use these roles on the project for different persons. If you have enough context, you can pick up the task, which is a higher role on the project, and you just read the documentation, you get more context, you get higher tasks for you. Okay, what is the cons then? It is the first one. It is chaos. It is highly possible. If your you see on this project, it's really important to have an architect, someone who has the context, who knows where the whole project goes, what are the goals of the project and other stuff. If your architect is not mature enough, he or she gonna lose the control really soon because of these puzzles that just different guys creating for the project, submitting the tasks, and maybe asking for the questions and asking for code review and other stuff. Someone who has really clear vision about the project. It's like a director in the movie. You cannot make the movie without the director. You need someone who has the vision, because otherwise the result will be not really good. If you have no director, if you have no script in your movie, then you just try to make something, it will be garbage in the end. And pretty the same here. If you have nobody who understands the project, who knows where the project goes, it will be really challenging for you to complete the project. Also, the next one is under the pressure. You see, because you have strict budget, only 1 hour, you need to concentrate, you need to do your best in 1 hour. We do not ask you to spend weeks about thinking the problem, you have to switch between close and decompose modes immediately. You just read the scope of the task, and you have to understand immediately what it is about. And you see, because this methodology is not really famous, and people don't know how to work with this. They just usually they used to think about the feature, I don't know, hours, days, raising the questions, having meetings, blah, blah, blah. Everybody just relaxed and don't know when the feature will be done, blah, blah, blah. It's really complex, raising a lot of questions. Someone have a lot of mess. You need to call the expert because nobody already knows how the project works or this feature, or what has to be done, blah, 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 and so on. Actually, in our regular projects, we already have a lot of chaos, and we try to handle it somehow and we have a lot of people, a lot of experts who communicate each other. You just see everything is in manual mode. You just have to drive it every day, just solving the problems, discussing the issues, having the meetings. I don't know. I know the guys who just going between the meetings all the day and participating in all of this process just to make the system to work. Because once someone is not working, nothing works. And this is one of the challenges that this puzzle-driven development tries to solve. And then the final one that I was capable to recognize here is weak developers can have a lot of problems with PDD. Because you see, if you're just not robust enough, if you really do not understand how to code, how to solve algorithmic problems, or maybe how to use this framework or that one, 1 hour will be completely not enough for you. You will be just lost in 1 hour. You will have nothing. You will not be able to deliver something. In addition to that, I can say if you got some kind of complex task, which need your brain to think about how to solve the problem. And I also, once I just was implementing the project, I got a couple of tasks which I don't know how to solve, and I just had to think. And the problems that you cannot complete some intermediate work. You see, we're just not familiar with this. How to wrap the work you started and deliver something that's already available but not completely done. Some intermediate work we're not capable. We just don't have such experience. Once I started working on the feature, I worked for 2, 3, 4 weeks when it will be ready. But once someone asks me to introduce some intermediate results, I have nothing. I don't know how to complete the intermediate task, introduce maybe some piece of code and new puzzles. It's really challenging to switch your mind to start thinking like that. And if you have a lot of weak developers in your team who even don't know how to write the code properly and maybe use the framework, and you ask them to switch between these modes, it will be really challenging for them. And they will be working under the pressure because they cannot focus for such short period of time. They just used to think about the problem for weeks and maybe writing some codes and reading the articles in between and all of this stuff, but it will not be working here. Also, maybe you noticed here on the left bottom corner that there are some points that Yegor Bugayenko introduced by himself. I asked him, I contacted him, and we had small discussion about the methodology. I just showed him my points, and he introduced a couple of new ones. You see, that he said that technical depth is more visible. He also agreed that risk of code chaos is higher, because if you're not mature enough, you can lose the control as an architect. Once you just have some not really robust person here at the top, everything will be ruined. It's pretty the same with what is happening on our projects, to be honest, but it's somehow hidden and not visible. With all the team tries to handle this, we involve more people, just trying to push this stone to some direction, and it's because of a lot of technical debt and unclear moments in the code and all of this stuff. You see, it just becomes a headache. Yeah, less code ownership and responsibility. It's also absolutely clear. And he says that the puzzle-driven development is not suitable for some tasks or some projects. Okay, maybe let's switch over to real project experience, and I'll show you what we were able to do.
Yeah, hey Denise. Yeah, I mean, we are almost out of time. Yeah, let's do this real life example really quickly, and then go through the community questions, right?
Yeah, as you see, we have here open source project object to test. It's a really interesting thing, which allows you to recreate the same object with the same state in debug mode and prepare it for unit test. Let's say you have an object, you know that something inside this object doesn't work really well, and you call this extension method to test. And then in the end, you have some line of code in string, which you can copy and paste into your unit test, and the internal state of this object will be recreated. Yeah, and how it's actually working. Let's say, just have yeah, by the way, we already have, you see, I'm going to show you the issues we created. This is the puzzles. And you see here, we have special labels for each role. It's developer, lead, and maybe architect, maybe low priority. And once you have the task, the puzzle, it's automatically created by puzzle collector here. You can open the class directly. Yeah, and here, you see you have the constructor here and the puzzle. And you can say, hey, just this unit test constructor with action argument doesn't work. It's not supported. And you see the unit test already prepared. This is the expected result. And this is the one that we introduced. And you need to spend your hour thinking and maybe do the analysis of the code, maybe creating new puzzles. And ideally, if you can make this test green, it will be enough. Yeah. Okay, once we're running out of time, guys, maybe let's switch over to the questions if you have ones.
Yeah, Denise, we do have a lot of the questions. So would you like me to read them, or you can go and read? Okay. Right. The first question, doesn't it is asked by Dmitry Kolotey. Doesn't it introduce a lot of extra work when we need to understand how to implement something, but it takes more than 2 hours, let's say 16 hours, and we spend time by separating them, passing to someone else, and etc. So, I mean, the question is about overhead on this decomposition, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is legal question, but anyway, this strict budget pushes you to introduce some intermediate work in 1 hour. Ideally, it can be some decomposed puzzles. You say, okay, just to, let's say you just need to implement some authentication form on your website. And you say, okay, login form, UI have to be implemented, maybe authentication for Azure Active Directory should be implemented, maybe some kind of service to communicate, to start the session or to prolongate the session. You just, before you start implementing something, you just start thinking about how it has to be done, which modules, which blocks of code has to be done just to complete the issue. If you do not understand what has to be done, of course, you cannot create the puzzles. But once the puzzle's created and you have really good vision about how it has to be done, you just can easily create the puzzles. And even the next step, you have the puzzles, you create some unit tests. You just start thinking about the test first. Okay, how can I test that it's working well? I understand that you see here, for example, I don't know how to solve this issue. For example, we have a class which has action delegate as a constructor argument, and now I don't know how to solve this issue, but I already was able to introduce some unit tests. And first of all, you just start thinking about the points, some kind of implementation plan. Maybe you see the documentation diagram has to be written first. You just mark this, okay, let's create the documentation in a high-level diagram about the whole flow and all stuff.
Right.
But
so yeah,
it's really the problem immediately. You do not understand the task. That's why you cannot decompose it. Of course, you prefer to start working on something, and then you get some experience, you get some understanding. But if it's not clear, you have to highlight it. It's not clear what has to be done. It's not clear how it has to be done. And you say, you can introduce the point, just investigate this framework, maybe something like this.
Okay, so actually Dmitry asked a few more questions and he raised the hand. So Dmitry, you can unmute and ask any clarifications.
Okay, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question that you read was a little bit different. So let's say we totally understand what we have to do. Let's say I want to write a controller and I understand totally what message should be there, but it will take, I don't know, like 6 hours, right? So it's not like 2-hour task. What should I do? Like spend extra time to create extra puzzles to one puzzle for one request for one rule.
Yes, if
like
you
that.
understand that it will take 6 hours, it's already brilliant. You can create 6 puzzles. You see, if you understand that it will take 6 hours, then it's just not some kind of atomic operation. The controller has to be created, maybe service has to be created. I want to also create this repository. You have the clear vision what has to be done. You understand that it's a really big feature, but it is clear vision. And you just say, repository has to be created, blah, blah, blah. Service has to be created, blah, blah, blah. You even can introduce some interface with the contract that you see. Implementation not needed, but you already introduced some kind of structure, high-level architecture on the contracts, saying, hey, this should be done like this, and everything should be composed in the controller like I've done. This is it.
It will take like half of the time I can spend on implementing it.
You see, you have only 1 hour, and you said that it will take 6 hours.
You mentioned like 1 to 2 hours, and I will spend 2 hours on this. And for example, another example with your code, let's say someone analyzed your issue and understand that what it should be, like make this test green, right? But if he spent this time and he already got into the context of this issue, right? And if he's inside the context, it's much easier to proceed, right? You know about this like developer flow, when you like dive into some problem and work with it, and now you switch in tasks, switch in context constantly. From my experience, it's like very bad.
I absolutely understand what you're talking about, and sometimes you really need a lot of time to complete something. But and you just really you spend time, maybe half a day, and then you had the whole context. But it means that your system is too big. You see that once you just, let's say you just understood something, and what we ask you to do, write the test. If you understand that, hey, okay, it seems this test is read because this module, this submodule, this repository doesn't work as expected, and you introduce the new test, saying you reduce the context. You say, hey, okay, I reference the parent and say, hey, this repository test should be green first. Once your controller test will be green. You just reduce the context. You already spent some time. You got some information. You put all of this information into the puzzle, just for someone who will join later after you will be able to continue your work. Of course, I understand that it is not an easy job to complete, because you don't, let's say, you don't used to think like that. As I told you, this is a problem. You cannot commit some intermediate work. You already got some context, but you cannot formalize. You cannot write it down. You cannot explain it in the text, because we just really are not really good in it. We cannot. It's better for us to call someone and speak about 40 minutes about how it has to be done, instead of writing down the article, maybe some article on Wiki, and share it with everybody. Everybody can just read it in 15 minutes, and you will save a lot of time. But you prefer to talk, to explain something, blah blah blah, because you're not really familiar how to write your thoughts down, how to formalize them, how to write some unit test to pin your work and commit. This is a problem, I understand, and nobody used to work like this. It's clear, but if you think about this, you just introduce the plan, you understand that maybe the documentation has been written first, it's not clear, and you just spend some time, you read the documentation, you read the code, and okay, I know the context, and documentation is really poor. I need to update it. You just update the doc, push it. Because someone else will spend less hours. I understand that it will be not really effective if you want to continue doing really big amount of job by yourself. But if you think it will allow you to split the work between the developers and involve someone who is not on the project if you need it. Of course, you want to do everything by yourself. It's absolutely clear. Sometimes it is more effective, but once you just get familiar with this and start thinking this way, you will be able to create puzzles for someone else. And it will give you the opportunity to involve someone on the project and ask to assist you. You don't have to do it by yourself. You can do it. Any other question? Just because it seems I just started.
Okay, just one more question. Continuing this one. So let's say you think that you need like 1 hour, like 1 hour and a half to implement some feature. You start working on it, and you understand like in the middle, like at the end, that you basically or someone else need like 3 hours to complete. So you stopped working, committing your change, and create some puzzles. That's your approach, right?
Yes. It is sad that you understood it only in 40 minutes, I guess. Of course, it is possible. I just faced such issue when I just spent maybe 45 minutes thinking about the solution, how it has to be done. Because, for example, we have an object which has circular reference on itself. It uses the object which uses this one, and you have the circular reference, and you need to solve it somehow here. And I didn't know how to solve this. And I was thinking about 40 minutes, 45. And then I realized, hey, I cannot commit the result because I don't know how to formalize my thoughts, how to read them down to be clear for anybody else. This is a problem, definitely, because we just not familiar with how to do this.
And what is the solution in this case? What have you done?
What I just said, what I just found, I tried to start with unit tests first. If I just think about the solution, I think, okay, do we have the unit test here? Okay, it's red. What I do, I just spend some time digging into the code and trying to analyze why this test is red. I mean that just I try to find the sub-module, maybe some delegated class, and I try to extract and write the test for this, maybe copy paste and okay, I already removed all of this stuff. It's not involved. The problem is not there, and I just introduce the test, asking, okay, I think if this test doesn't work, this one, the new one with a closed scope, shouldn't be green also. It is a good idea if you I introduce the test and it is green, it's already okay. I can commit my results saying, hey, the problem is not here. I introduce the test, it is green, just dig somewhere else. You can update the puzzle with information that this test is green. The problem not is in the service itself. Service working well.
Okay, yeah, guys, sorry for interrupting you. We still have plenty of questions, and I would like to go through them. And then if, Dmitry, you still have some questions to ask, you will be able to proceed. Yeah, Denis, let's try to go quick through what we have. There is one very popular question, not a question, a comment from Marcin Bukovsky that, well, actually he doesn't like this methodology, and the only thing that he liked is the name. So puzzle sounds so good until you learn that this methodology is about ridiculous. So he doesn't like this methodology. Well, this is just an opinion. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It's acceptable. Yeah, we can have different opinions.
It's better to try first. If he already tried this one, it's a valid point. But if he doesn't like because he didn't try, it's a little silly.
Right. One more. The very debatable principles. What if junior is on the team? Should he create many tickets? In some cases, more easy to ask in Slack. Yeah. Again, let's try to answer quickly. I think you mentioned something like that.
Yes, it's something is not clear for you. Of course, it is a project problem if we assign some lead or architect tasks on the junior developer. Maybe we can introduce some new roles: senior developer, junior developer. And you see, okay, this task can be done by junior developer.
Okay. In this PDD approach, what is the way to identify ETA in the original requests puzzle estimates. As client might ask, let me know when this will be finished.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
Well, it's about estimation. So imagine.
They just, of course, if you don't have the tooling, as I said, Yegor has developed the Zerocrat tool, which constantly scanning the progress of your project. It just scanning for open puzzles. It just has the statistics about the previous day. It just knows about how many zero-level puzzles were created by the business. Maybe he knows that it's about travel domain and the high-level puzzles were 50. And it already has some database where such kind of products for travel domain and had 50, 55, 60 puzzles were done in 6 months, were done in 5 months. It accumulates the statistics and it teaches itself about how the project process happens, and depending on how fast you open the puzzles and you close the puzzles, your team, how fast it is moving and what is the domain, what was initial start, and how it just tries to predict like file download in the Explorer. It just downloads, it shows you the speed, how many kilobytes per second, and it knows the total weight of size of your file and can predict how much time it will take if you continue moving this velocity. Of course, your velocity can be increased or decreased, and it immediately will react and will re-estimate. You see, you don't have to involve anybody else. You see that previous week, your team wasn't working really well. They didn't create the puzzles, they didn't follow the puzzles, and your velocity just goes down. And this Zerocrat immediately re-estimates and say, hey, your project goes longer and longer.
So quick question right here about Zerocrat puzzle estimation. It will work after puzzles are ready, correct?
Yeah, if it has no puzzles, it's nothing to track.
So yeah, but so can we estimate the project in the beginning, like before we start, before we created all the puzzles?
Yeah, you see, you can add the puzzles number, the level number 0, and introduce the domain area and the puzzles, maybe the number of acceptance criteria, something like this. It will give you some kind of raw estimations about how much time it will take for the project. Maybe you can show some results. If your team will be 6 members, 8 members, 3 members, we already have some kind of statistics about travel projects. The teams were this size, maybe it was 55 puzzles, 100 puzzles, 200 puzzles. The projects were done in 6 months, 9 months. It already can give you some. You see how, let's say you just start the project and you want to know the statistics.
I see. Okay. There was also a comment that docs first. Is it agile violation? Because according to agile, documentation part is not as important.
It is not. Once you're able to complete the puzzles without any documentation, you can move ahead and complete. But once someone who was assigned to the ticket read your scope, maybe you just introduce some leak on wiki page and blank. You understand that maybe it's better we decided to introduce the wiki about what has to be done, how it has to be done, but we didn't write it. We just introduced the link. And once you go to the link, you see nothing, or you see something really weird or not clear, you immediately push it back and say, hey guys, your wiki page is awful. Could you please fix it? And you create a new puzzle, fix this wiki page. It's not clear. This moment is not clear. This moment is not clear. Number 5 is not clear. You already contributed into the project by asking these questions, reading the article, not article, but reading the wiki page, finding some kind of unclear moments, pushing them back. You already helped the project to improve.
Right. One more question about risks mitigation related to architect and lead. So if I understand it correctly, if we have not a strong lead or architect as we expected,
yes,
how to mitigate such risks?
It is difficult to predict such risks because you definitely can end up into the situation when your architect does not understand. That was implemented, some features, how it's implemented, how it's working. He lost the control, and it really depends. Once you start the project and nobody is familiar with this approach, with this methodology, it is a high risk. That's why we just decided to try it on the R&D project first. We didn't decide to try it on production project. Of course, you need to train first. You need to have some practice to understand some.
Okay. So in other words, you can mitigate the risks just by running some kind of trial project first to make sure that this team composition can deal with this methodology. Right. Okay.
Like everybody is familiar with Scrum now. You don't have to explain the Scrum once someone joins the project.
True.
You know,
that's true.
Ceremonies, all this stuff. But once you're familiar with PDD,
yeah, I mean, even in a Scrum team, if you have a weak team lead, then you will have some troubles very soon. Yeah. Okay. So another question regarding the scope change. So how to deal?
It can be done really easily. Your business introduce the puzzles, and the team just started. The business has to pay attention to the priority. They can manage the priority. Okay, we want this puzzle first. You see that just as in our example, we have some special labels here, which says, okay, it is low priority, and you can have some high priority issue. You can manage, you just read the puzzles, your architect reads the puzzles, he listens to the business. And if you just business introduce new puzzles, it's not a big deal. You just add them into the system and system start working automatically. But the only thing you need to manage is the priority. Just not to let guys to work on something that is not important for you, maybe. But you see, it just definitely gives some kind of instruments for you to manage the project.
Okay, and the last one, how to motivate developers to work with this PDD. Is it possible to use this approach for a long time?
Yes, this is a good question. And the answer was given by Yegor Bugayenko. He said you need to pay extra money. You need to motivate your guys with the money. He said that more money you pay, more motivated you guys. He just found this solution. He says that once you just been able to complete, let's say, I don't know, 50 puzzles a month, maybe you can introduce some bonuses.
Okay, some kind of outcome-based scenario here. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's all the questions that we had, and we are really out of time. So yeah, guys, let's wrap up our session. So in the chat, we have a link to our community portal where you can leave your feedbacks. Yeah, please pay attention on that. Please spend several minutes. So this is the way how we can improve. Alexander, you've just turned on your camera, so you wanted to say something at the end?
No, I just actually did this.
Okay, okay, yeah. So Denise, Alexander, thank you so much for this really nice session. Thanks to all our participants. It was nice to chat with you. Nice to have these debates. Really enjoyed. So see you soon. Next time we are going to talk about .NET 7 release. There should be something really interesting. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
See you.